Jake Harrison walked through the long metal hallway of the Aurora. His boots made soft sounds on the floor as he headed back to his room. The patrol mission had been long and boring. Nothing but empty space and distant stars. He was tired and wanted to rest. The Aurora was a big ship that traveled through space. It was home to 300 people who worked together to explore the galaxy. Jake was one of the officers in charge. He had been in space for 5 years now and knew every corner of the ship. When Jake reached his door, he pressed his hand on the scanner. The door opened with a quiet sound. He stepped inside and stopped. Someone was sitting in his chair. It was Amy Rodriguez, his friend who worked in communications. Amy looked scared. Her hands were shaking, and she kept looking at the door. Jake had never seen her like this before. Amy was usually calm and happy. She was the person who talked to other ships and planets. She was good at her job and never seemed worried about anything. "Amy, what are you doing here?" Jake asked. He closed the door behind him and walked closer to her. Amy stood up quickly. She had something small in her hand. It looked like a thumb drive, the kind people used to store information on computers. But this one looked different. It was made of metal that seemed to shine with its own light. "Jake, I need you to take this," Amy said. Her voice was quiet and fast. "Start with folder 1. Don't tell anyone else about this. Not yet." Jake looked at the small device in her hand. It was no bigger than his thumb, but it felt heavy when Amy placed it in his palm. The metal was warm and smooth. He had never seen anything like it before. "What is this?" Jake asked. He turned the device over in his hands. There were no words or symbols on it, just the strange metal that seemed to glow softly. "I found something during my shift," Amy said. She was still speaking quietly, like she was afraid someone might hear her. "I was monitoring the deep space communications like always, but I picked up a signal that wasn't meant for us." Jake frowned. The Aurora received signals from other human ships and planets all the time. That was normal. But Amy looked like she had seen something terrible. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. Amy walked to the door and pressed her ear against it. She was listening to make sure no one was coming. Then she came back to Jake. "It wasn't from humans," she said. "It was from something else. Something out there in space." And Jake, I think I understood what it was saying. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. There were stories about other life forms in the galaxy, but humans had never made contact with any of them. The Aurora and other ships had been exploring space for decades, but they had only found empty planets and dead civilizations. "How could you understand it?" Jake asked. Amy's eyes were wide with fear and excitement. "Remember those translation programs I've been working on in my free time? The ones I said were just for fun? I think I've been preparing for this without knowing it." Jake remembered Amy spending long hours in her room, working on computer programs that could translate different languages. She had always been interested in languages and codes. She could speak 5 human languages and was always trying to learn more. "Amy, are you sure about this?" Jake asked. Maybe it was just interference from a star or something. Amy shook her head. "No, Jake, this was different. It was organized. It had patterns. And when I ran it through my translation programs, it started to make sense. There are files on that drive that will prove everything." Jake looked at the small device again. It felt heavier now, like it was full of secrets. "Where did you get this drive?" "I made it," Amy said. "I downloaded everything I could from the signal before it stopped. There are 3 folders on there, but you have to start with folder 1. Promise me you'll start with folder 1. Jake could see that Amy was serious. She had never lied to him before. They had been friends since they both joined the Aurora crew. She had always been honest and smart. Why can't you just tell me what's in it? Jake asked. Amy looked at the door again. Because you won't believe me unless you see it yourself. And because I think we're running out of time, the signal came from somewhere close. Too close. Jake put the drive in his pocket. It felt warm. Against his leg. Okay, I'll look at it. But Amy, if this is some kind of joke, ... It's not a joke, Amy said quickly. I wish it was. Jake, after you read folder 1, we need to talk again. But not here. Not on the ship. We need to be more careful. Amy walked to the door and pressed her hand on the scanner. The door opened, and she looked both ways down the hallway. Then she turned back to Jake. Remember, start with folder 1. And Jake, don't doubt what you read. I know it will sound crazy, but it's all true. Amy left quickly, walking fast down the hallway. Jake watched her go, then closed his door. He sat down at his desk and pulled out the strange thumb drive. His computer was a standard model that all officers used. Jake connected the drive to it and waited. The computer made a soft sound, and then a window opened on the screen. There were 3 folders, just like Amy had said. They were labeled 1, 2, and 3. Jake moved his mouse to the first folder. His hand stopped for a moment. Something told him that once he opened this folder, everything would change. He would learn something that would make his life different. But Amy was his friend. She had never steered him wrong before. If she said this was important, then it was important. Jake clicked on folder 1. The folder opened, and Jake began to read. What he saw made his hands shake just like Amy's had. The first file was titled First, Contact Protocol, and it was not written by humans. Jake stared at his computer screen for a long time. The words he was reading did not make sense at first. Then slowly, they began to make terrible sense. The first document was written in many different languages. Jake could read the English parts, but there were also sections in what looked like Chinese, Spanish, and Russian. But there were other parts written in symbols he had never seen before. Strange curved lines and dots that looked like no human language dot at the bottom of each page. There were English translations. Amy's computer programs had changed the alien words into words Jake could understand. The translation was not perfect, but it was good enough to understand the meaning. The document was called Species 7432C Observation Report. Jake realized that Species 7432C meant humans. The report talked about Earth and the people who lived there. It described human cities, armies, and spaceships. It knew about human technology and how fast humans were learning new things. But this was not a report written by one group of aliens. Jake could see that many different alien species had worked together to write it. There were notes from something called the Galactic Council and signatures from beings with names Jake could not pronounce. Jake read faster. The report said that humans had been watched for many years. Alien ships had been hiding near Earth and around human colonies. They had been studying human behavior and learning about human strengths and weaknesses. What scared Jake most was how much the aliens knew. They had detailed maps of Earth's cities. They knew how many humans lived on each planet. They even knew about secret human military bases that Jake had never heard of. The aliens had divided their contact with humans into 3 phases. Phase 1 was called passive observation. This meant watching humans without letting them know aliens existed. According to the report, this phase had been going on for decades. Phase 2 was called active testing. Jake did not like the sound of that. The report said that in this phase, aliens would begin to test human reactions to different situations. They would see how humans solved problems and how they fought when they were in danger. Phase 3 was simply called integration or elimination. The report did not explain what this meant, but Jake could guess. Either humans would be allowed to join the galactic community, or they would be destroyed. Jake found a timeline at the end of the first document. According to the alien calculations, humanity had 6 months before Phase 2 would begin. The report was dated 3 weeks ago. Jake kept reading. The next document was even more frightening. It was an analysis of human behavior written by alien scientists. The report called humans an unusual species and said they were extremely adaptable. The aliens had studied human history. They knew about human wars, disasters, and achievements. They had watched humans survive ice ages, plagues, and world wars. Every time something terrible happened to humans, they found a way to survive and become stronger. One section of the report made Jake's blood run cold. It was titled Threat Assessment, and it was marked with symbols that Amy's translator said meant maximum danger. The report said that humans were different from other species the aliens had encountered. Most species became less aggressive as they developed better technology. But humans became more dangerous as they learned new things. The aliens were especially worried about human creativity and their ability to turn any situation to their advantage. Jake found a list of human traits that worried the aliens. Humans were good at working together in groups. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for others. They learned quickly from their mistakes. Most importantly, they never gave up, even when the situation seemed hopeless. The report included examples from human history. It talked about how humans had survived the destruction of their early cities by building better ones. It described how humans had turned diseases into medicines and how they had learned to fly by watching birds. But the part that seemed to scare the aliens most was human warfare. The report said that humans were the only species that had ever turned their own planet's dangers into weapons. They had learned to use fire, water, and even the weather to fight their enemies. Jake read about how humans had domesticated wild animals and turned them into tools of war. He read about how humans had taken their enemies' weapons and made them better. The aliens called this technological vampirism and said it was unique to humans. The final document in Folder 1 was a communication between alien commanders. Jake could tell from the translation that they were arguing about what to do with humans. Some aliens wanted to destroy humanity immediately. They said humans were too dangerous to be allowed to develop further. They pointed out that humans had gone from riding horses to flying in space in less than 100 years. At this rate, humans would become a threat to the entire galaxy. But other aliens disagreed. They said that destroying an entire species was against galactic law. They wanted to try to control human development by limiting their access to certain technologies. A third group of aliens had a different idea. They wanted to test humans to see if they could be trusted. If humans passed the tests, they would be allowed to join the galactic community. If they failed, they would be eliminated. The argument had gone on for months, but finally the testing group had won. The timeline showed that the tests would begin soon. Jake leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. He had been reading for hours and his head hurt. But he could not stop thinking about what he had learned. Humans were not alone in the galaxy. There were many other species out there, and they had been watching Earth for a long time. They saw humans as a threat, and they were planning to test humanity to decide if humans should live or die. Jake thought about his life on the Aurora. He had always believed that humans were exploring empty space, looking for new worlds to colonize. He had never imagined that they were being watched and judged by alien civilizations. He looked at his computer screen again. There were still 2 more folders to read. But Amy had told him to start with Folder 1, and now he understood why. This information was hard to believe. If Amy had just told him about aliens, he would have thought she was crazy. But the documents were too detailed to be fake. They contained information that no human could have known. They described human society from the outside, the way only aliens could see it. Jake realized that Amy had been right to be scared. If these documents were real, then everything humans believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. They were not explorers discovering new worlds. They were prisoners being studied by their captors. Jake saved the documents to his personal files and disconnected the thumb drive. He needed to think about what he had learned, and he needed to talk to Amy again. But first, he had to decide if he believed what he had read. Part of him wanted to think it was all a mistake or a joke. But deep down, he knew Amy was right. The documents were real, and humanity was in danger. Jake put the thumb drive back in his pocket and stood up. Outside his window, he could see the stars. They had always looked peaceful and beautiful to him, but now they looked different. Now he knew that somewhere out there, alien beings were watching and waiting. The test was coming, and humanity did not even know it was about to begin. Jake could not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the alien documents. He kept the thumb drive in his pocket, feeling its weight against his leg. By morning, he had made up his mind. He needed to see what was in. Folder 2. He found Amy in the cafeteria during breakfast. She was sitting alone at a corner table, picking at her food. When she saw Jake coming, she looked nervous. "Did you read it?" she asked quietly. Jake sat down across from her. "I read." Folder 1. "Amy, this is incredible. If it's real, then everything we know is wrong." Amy nodded. "I know. I felt the same way when I first translated it. But Jake, you're not ready for Folder 2 yet." "What do you mean I'm not ready?" Jake asked. "I believed Folder 1, didn't I?" "You doubted it at first," Amy said. "I could see it in your eyes. You thought I was crazy or playing a joke. You only believed it when you saw the evidence yourself." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew Amy was right. He had doubted her until he read the documents himself. "Trust me on this," Amy continued. "You need to see something first. Something that will prove that what's in Folder 2 is real." "What kind of something?" Jake asked. Amy looked around the cafeteria to make sure no one was listening. The documents in Folder 1 mentioned that Phase 2 would begin soon. Active testing. "I think it's about to start." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know?" "Because I've been monitoring all communications since I found that signal," Amy said. "There have been strange readings in Sector 7. Captain Morgan is going to order us to investigate." Jake knew Sector 7. It was empty space at the edge of human territory. Nothing was supposed to be there. "What kind of readings?" Jake asked. "A derelict ship," Amy said. "It appeared 3 days ago. The sensors show it's not human technology, but it's not moving. Captain Morgan thinks it might be a first contact situation." Jake understood. If an alien ship was found, it would be the biggest discovery in human history. The entire crew would be excited and curious. They would want to explore it and learn from it. "But it's not really a first contact situation, is it?" Jake said. Amy shook her head. "It's a test. The aliens are putting a ship in our path to see how we react. They want to study how humans handle unknown technology." 2 hours later, Captain Lisa Morgan called all senior officers to the bridge. Jake and Amy were both there, along with the other department heads. The captain was a tall woman with gray hair and serious eyes. She had been commanding spaceships for 20 years. "We've received a report of a derelict vessel in Sector 7, Captain Morgan announced. "Long-range sensors show it's not of human origin. This could be our first contact with an alien civilization." The other officers looked excited. Chief Engineer Danny Park was practically bouncing in his chair. Security Chief Maria Santos was asking questions about the ship's size and weapons. Science Officer Tom Blake was already planning what equipment they would need to study the alien. Technology. Jake watched his crewmates and felt sick. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The aliens were testing them, and they were eager to take the test. "We'll reach the derelict in 6 hours," Captain Morgan continued. "I want all departments to prepare for a possible first contact situation. This is what we've been training for." After the meeting, Jake tried to find Amy, but she was busy in the communications center. He went to his quarters and waited. 6 hours felt like 6 days. When they reached Sector 7, Jake was on the bridge with the other officers. Through the main view screen, he could see the alien ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship was huge, much bigger than the Aurora. It was shaped like a crystal, with sharp edges and smooth surfaces. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue light, but other parts were dark and damaged. It looked like it had been in a battle. "Scans show no life signs," Tom Blake reported, "but there are still some active power sources. The ship appears to be abandoned." Captain Morgan nodded. "Prepare an away team. I want volunteers only. This could be dangerous." Jake volunteered immediately. So did Danny Park, Maria Santos, and 4 other crew members. They put on their spacesuits and took a shuttle to the alien ship. The ship's hull was made of a material Jake did not recognize. It was harder than steel, but seemed to bend slightly when they touched it. Danny Park ran his scanner over the surface and whistled softly. "This is incredible," he said. "The molecular structure is like nothing I've ever seen. It's as if the G-Fun metal is alive." They found an opening in the ship's hull that looked like an airlock. When they approached it, the door opened automatically. Inside, there was air that their suits said was safe to breathe. The ship's interior was even more amazing than the outside. The walls curved in impossible ways, and there were no sharp corners anywhere. Everything was lit by the same soft blue glow they had seen from outside. "Look at this," Maria Santos called out. She was standing in front of what looked like a control panel. The buttons and switches were shaped for hands that were not human. Some were too big for human fingers, and others were too small. Danny Park was already working on the panel, trying to understand how it worked. Jake watched him connect his portable computer to the alien systems. It should have been impossible, but Danny was making it work. "The power systems are similar to ours, but more advanced," Danny explained. "I think I can interface our equipment with theirs." Within an hour, Danny had figured out how to turn on the ship's main systems. Lights came on throughout the ship, and they could hear the hum of machinery starting up. "How are you doing that?" Jake asked. Danny grinned. "It's just engineering. The basics are the same everywhere. Power, circuits, computers. Once you understand the principles, you can work with any technology." Jake realized that this was exactly what the aliens were testing. They wanted to see how humans would react to unknown technology. And Danny was showing them that humans could adapt to anything. Maria Santos was exploring the ship's weapon systems. She had found what looked like a gun, but it was designed for creatures with 4 arms. She was figuring out how to modify it so humans could use it. "The targeting system is amazing," she said. "It uses some kind of energy beam that can change its power level. I think I can reverse engineer this." Jake watched his crewmates work, and he began to understand what the aliens were afraid of. Humans did not just study alien technology. They improved it. They made it better and found new ways to use it. By the time they returned to the Aurora, Danny had copied the alien ship's power systems. Maria had figured out how their weapons worked. Tom Blake had downloaded their navigation computers. Captain Morgan was thrilled. "This is the greatest discovery in human history," she said. "We'll be studying this technology for years." But Jake knew the truth. The aliens had given them this technology on purpose. They were testing human ability to understand and adapt. Alien systems. And humanity was passing the test in ways that probably scared the aliens. That night, Jake found Amy in her quarters. She was waiting for him with the thumb drive in her hand. "Now you're ready for folder 2, she said. Jake took the drive and connected it to his computer. When he opened folder 2, he understood why Amy had made him wait. The documents inside explained that this was not humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. The folder contained Amy's research into human history. She had found evidence that humans had been taking alien tests for generations. Events that historians thought were natural disasters or accidents were actually alien experiments. Jake read about unexplained technology advances throughout human history. He read about mysterious objects that had been found and studied by human scientists. He read about people who had claimed to see strange lights in the sky. The pattern was clear. Every time humanity faced a major challenge, they had not just survived. They had learned from it and become stronger. They had taken whatever the aliens threw at them and turned it into an advantage. Jake looked at Amy. "We've been doing this for a long time, haven't we?" Amy nodded. "And we keep surprising them. Every test they give us, we pass in ways they don't expect. I think that's why they're so afraid of us." Jake thought about Danny Park making alien technology work with human equipment. He thought about Maria Santos figuring out how to use alien weapons. He thought about his entire crew treating an impossible situation like just another problem to solve. What happens when they realize we're not just passing their tests? Jake asked. What happens when they figure out we're learning from them? Amy's expression was serious. "That's what folder 3 is for." "But Jake, I don't think you're ready for that yet." Jake looked at the thumb drive in his hand. He was beginning to understand that each folder was more dangerous than the last. But he was also beginning to understand that humanity was more dangerous. Then the aliens realized the test had begun, and humans were not just participants. They were students, and they were very good at learning. The discovery of the alien ship changed everything on the Aurora. For the next few weeks, every scientist and engineer on the ship worked day and night to understand the new technology. Jake watched his crewmates work with excitement and pride. But he also felt worried that he knew this was exactly what the aliens expected. They were testing human reactions, and humans were showing them just how dangerous they could be. Danny Park had already figured out how to improve the alien power systems. He combined them with human technology to create something that was better than either one alone. The new power cores were smaller, more efficient, and more reliable than anything humans had built before. Maria Santos had done the same thing with the alien weapons. She studied their energy systems and found ways to make them more powerful. She also figured out how to build them using human materials and manufacturing processes. Tom Blake had been working on the alien navigation computers. He discovered that they used a completely different way of calculating space travel. When he combined this with human mathematics, he created navigation systems that were incredibly accurate. But Jake knew that none of his crewmates understood what they were really doing. They thought they were just studying alien technology. They did not know they were being tested. Jake found Amy in the communications center late one night. She was monitoring deep space signals, looking for more alien transmissions. "I've been picking up more communications," she told him quietly. "The aliens are talking about the Aurora. They're discussing our performance on the test." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Amy looked worried. "They're surprised. The test was supposed to take us months to complete. We did it in weeks. They're starting to realize that humans are more dangerous than they thought." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What does that mean for us?" "It means they're going to change their plans," Amy said. "The timeline for Phase 3 is being moved up. They're not going to wait to see if we pass all their tests. There, going to make a decision about humanity soon. Jake knew they had to do something. But what could two people do against an entire galactic civilization? Amy seemed to read his thoughts. We're not alone, Jake. I've been in contact with other humans who know the truth. There are people on other ships, on colonies, even on Earth, who have figured out what's happening. How many people? Jake asked. Enough, Amy said. We call ourselves the Folder Protocol. We've been sharing information and preparing for what's coming. Jake was amazed. How long has this been going on? Longer than you might think, Amy said. Jake, you're ready for Folder 3 now, but I have to warn you. What you're about to learn will change everything you believe about humanity. Jake took the thumb drive from Amy and went back to his quarters. He sat at his computer and opened Folder 3. What he saw made him question everything he thought he knew about human history. The folder contained documents that Amy had translated from. Dozens of alien communications. But these were not recent transmissions. Some of them were decades old. Some were even older than that. The documents told the story of humanity from the alien perspective. But it was not the story Jake had learned in school. According to the alien records, humans had been in contact with alien civilizations for over a century. The first contact had happened in the early 1900s, when an alien scout ship had crashed on Earth. Humans had found the ship and studied its technology. But instead of trying to contact the aliens, humans had kept the discovery secret. They had reverse-engineered the alien technology and used it to advance their own civilization. Jake read about how human space travel had really developed. The rockets and engines that took humans to the stars were not human inventions. They were based on alien technology that had been captured and improved. The aliens had tried to make contact with humans several times over the decades. Each time, humans had appeared friendly and cooperative. But each time, they had been secretly studying alien technology and learning alien weaknesses. Jake found a document that made his hands shake. It was an alien military report from 50 years ago. The report warned that humans were technological vampires who absorbed and improved any technology they encountered. The report described how humans had turned their own planet's dangers into advantages. They had learned to use fire, which most alien species feared. They had domesticated predators and turned them into companions. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters by adapting and becoming stronger. But what worried the aliens most was human creativity. The report said that humans could take any situation, no matter how dangerous, and find a way to benefit from it. They called this the human factor. Jake read example after example of human behavior that terrified the aliens. Humans used their prey animals as food, but then they bred them to be bigger and healthier. They lived on a planet that constantly tried to kill them, but they had learned to predict earthquakes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions. Most frightening of all, humans took their enemies' weapons and made them better. Every war in human history had ended with both sides having better technology than when they started. The aliens had been trying to find a way to control or eliminate humanity for decades. But every simulation they ran ended the same way. Humans would adapt, overcome, and then begin expanding aggressively into alien territory. Jake found a section of the folder that was labeled Recent Developments. It contained information that made him realize just how far behind the aliens were. Humans had been aware of alien observation for much longer than the aliens knew. The Aurora and ships, like it, were not exploration vessels. They were part of a secret human intelligence operation designed to study alien technology and tactics. Jake read about human colonies that officially did not exist. He read about human ships that were much more advanced than anything the public knew about. He read about human scientists who had been secretly working with captured alien Technology for decades. The folder contained blueprints for human weapons that were far more advanced than anything on the Aurora. It showed human ships that could travel faster than light without using the jump gates that normal ships needed. Jake realized that humanity had been preparing for this confrontation for a long time. The aliens thought they were testing primitive humans who had just discovered space travel. But humans had been studying aliens since before Jake was born. The final document in folder 3 was a communication between alien commanders from just a few days ago. They were discussing what to do about the human problem. The aliens had finally realized that their observation had been compromised. They knew that humans were aware of being watched. They suspected that humans had been feeding them false information for decades. The alien commanders were arguing about whether to attack humanity immediately or try to negotiate. Some wanted to destroy human civilization before it could spread. Further, others wanted to try to make a deal with human leaders. But all of them agreed on one thing. Humanity was the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Humans did not just survive challenges. They turned challenges into opportunities. Jake closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. He felt like he was seeing the galaxy for the first time. Everything he had believed about humanity's place in space was wrong. Humans were not innocent explorers discovering new worlds. They were predators who had been pretending to be prey. They had been studying their observers while pretending to be observed. Jake thought about the alien ship they had found. It had not been a test of human abilities. It had been a trap, and humans had walked into it willingly. But instead of being caught, they had learned from it and become stronger. He thought about Danny Park improving alien power systems. He thought about Maria Santos making alien weapons more deadly. He thought about Tom Blake combining alien and human navigation to create something better than either. This was what the aliens feared. Humans did not just use alien technology. They improved it and made it their own. They turned their enemies' strengths into weaknesses and their own weaknesses into strengths. Jake stood up and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the stars. But now he knew that some of those stars were home to alien civilizations that were afraid of humanity. The thought should have scared him, but instead, it made him proud. Humans had been underestimated for decades, and they had used that underestimation to their advantage. Jake picked up the thumb drive and put it in his pocket. He needed to find Amy and learn more about the folder protocol. If humanity was going to survive what was coming, they would need to work together. But for the first time since this all began, Jake felt confident. The aliens had been testing humanity for decades, thinking they were studying a primitive species. Instead, they had been teaching humanity how to defeat them. Jake found Amy in the observation deck at the front of the ship. She was standing alone, looking out at the stars. When she heard him coming, she turned around. Her face was calm, but her eyes were serious. "You read folder 3, she said. It was not a question. Jake nodded. "Amy, what you showed me changes everything, but I need to know something. How did you really get that alien signal? How did you know exactly what to look for?" Amy smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "I was wondering when you would ask that question. You're getting smarter, Jake. That's good. You're going to need to be smart for what comes next." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Amy walked over to the observation window. "Jake, I need to tell you something about myself. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What kind of something? "I'm not just a communications officer who happened to intercept an alien signal," Amy said. "I'm part of something much bigger. Something that has been going on for a very long time." Jake stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Amy turned away from the window to face him. "The folder protocol is not a new organization that formed after we discovered the aliens. It's been around for decades. My grandfather was part of it. My mother was part of it. And now I'm part of it. Jake's mind was spinning. You're saying this is some kind of family business? Not family, Amy said. Something much more important. Jake, humanity has known about the aliens since the beginning. We've been aware of their observation for over a century. Everything I showed you in those folders is true, but it's not the whole truth. Jake sat down in one of the observation chairs. His legs felt weak. What's the whole truth? Amy sat down next to him. The whole truth is that humanity has been playing a very long game. We've been letting the aliens think they were studying us while we were actually studying them. Every test they gave us was an opportunity to learn more about their technology and their weaknesses. But why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Jake asked. Because you had to discover it yourself, Amy said. The thumb drive was not just information, Jake. It was a test. A test of you. Jake felt confused and angry. A test? You tested me? Amy nodded. We needed to know if you could handle the truth. Your psychological profile showed that you were someone who needed to discover things gradually. If I had just told you everything at once, you would not have believed me. Jake thought about the past few weeks. He remembered how he had doubted Amy at first. He remembered how he had needed to see proof before he believed anything. Amy was right. If she had told him everything at once, he would have thought she was crazy. So the Aurora's mission, Jake said slowly, finding that alien ship. That was all planned? Not planned exactly, Amy said. But we knew something like it would happen. The aliens have been testing humanity for decades. We've been ready for their tests. Jake felt like everything he knew about his life was falling apart. How many people on this ship know the truth? More than you think, Amy said. Captain Morgan knows. Danny Park knows. Maria Sanctus knows. We've all been recruited at different times and in different ways. Jake remembered how excited his crewmates had been when they found the alien ship. But now he realized their excitement had been different. They had not been surprised. They had been prepared. Why me? Jake asked. Why did you choose me? Amy looked out at the stars again. Because you're good at what you do. Because you're trustworthy. And because we're going to need you for what comes next. What comes next? Jake asked. Amy stood up and walked back to the window. The aliens are getting ready to move to Phase 3. Integration or elimination. They're going to make their final decision about humanity very soon. And what will that decision be? Jake asked. They're going to try to eliminate us, Amy said. They've realized that we're too dangerous to be allowed to continue developing. They think we're going to become a threat to the entire galaxy. Jake felt scared, but also angry. So what do we do? How do we fight an entire galactic civilization? Amy smiled, and this time it was a real smile. Jake, you still don't understand. We're not going to fight them. We're going to show them that they made a mistake. What kind of mistake? Jake asked. Amy pressed her hand against the observation window. They've been studying us for decades, but they never understood what they were looking at. They think we're a primitive species that just discovered space travel. They have no idea what we're really capable of. Jake thought about the documents he had read. The aliens were afraid of human adaptability and creativity, but they still thought of humans as a young species that needed to be controlled or eliminated. Amy, what aren't you telling me? Jake asked. Amy turned around to face him. Her expression was serious again. Jake, the Aurora is not a research vessel. It's not an exploration ship. It's a warship disguised as a science vessel. Jake's mouth fell open. What? The weapon systems that Maria found on the alien ship. We already had better ones. The power systems that Danny reverse engineered? Our real engines are much more advanced. The navigation computers that Tom was so excited about? We've been using better ones for years. Jake could not believe what he was hearing. But I've seen our ship specs. I know what weapons we have. You know what weapons we appear to have, Amy corrected. The Aurora has hidden systems that most of the crew doesn't know about. Weapons that were built using alien technology we captured decades ago. Shields that can protect us from anything the aliens can throw at us. Jake stood up and walked around. The observation deck. He needed to move to help himself think. So when the aliens attack us, we'll be ready, Amy finished. And Jake, we won't be alone. There are hundreds of ships like the Aurora scattered throughout human space. Ships that look like research vessels or cargo haulers or passenger transports, but they're all warships. Jake stopped walking and stared at Amy. How long have we been preparing for this war? Since the first alien ship crashed on Earth, Amy said. Every generation of humans has been working toward this moment. We've been building ships, developing weapons, and training crews, all while pretending to be peaceful explorers. Jake thought about human history. He thought about all the wars and conflicts that had shaped humanity. We've been practicing, haven't we? All of human history has been practice for fighting aliens. Amy nodded. Humans are the only species that has ever turned their own planet into a training ground. Every war we fought taught us something new about tactics and strategy. Every disaster we survived made us stronger and more adaptable. Jake walked back to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were preparing to attack humanity. But humanity was not the weak, primitive species. The aliens thought they were. When will it start? Jake asked. Soon, Amy said. The alien fleet is already moving toward human space. They think they're going to surprise us. They have no idea that we've been tracking their movements for months. Jake felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. What's my role in all this? Amy walked over to him and put her hand on his shoulder. Your role is to help lead humanity through what comes next. Jake, you're not just a lieutenant commander on a research vessel. You're an officer in the human space fleet, a real space fleet that the aliens never knew existed. Jake looked at Amy's face and saw something he had never seen before. Confidence, determination, pride. The aliens made one crucial mistake, Amy continued. They underestimated us. They thought they were studying a primitive species that could be easily controlled or destroyed. Instead, they were teaching us how to defeat them. Jake thought about everything he had learned over the past few weeks. The aliens had been testing humanity for decades, but humanity had been studying the aliens right back. Every test had been an opportunity to learn alien weaknesses and steal alien technology. Amy, there's something I need to know, Jake said. The thumb drive you gave me, was there really a fourth folder? Amy smiled and pulled out the thumb drive. She handed it to Jake. Why don't you look and see? Jake connected the drive to a portable computer that Amy had brought with her. When the folders appeared on the screen, there were 4 of them. The 4th folder was labeled, Now it's our turn to test them. Jake opened the folder and found a single document. It was a message addressed to him personally. Welcome to the real human space fleet, the message read. You have passed all the tests. You are ready to learn the final truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. We are not the species being tested. We are the species doing the testing. For decades, we have been evaluating alien civilizations to determine if they can be trusted to share the galaxy with humanity. The aliens failed the test. They chose to try to eliminate us rather than try to understand us. They chose fear over cooperation. They chose war over peace. Now it is time for them to learn what humanity is really capable of. It is time for them to discover what happens when you underestimate the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Jake looked at Amy. Is this real? Amy nodded. every word. Jake, the war is about to begin. But it's not going to be the war the aliens expect. They think they're attacking a primitive species that just learned to travel between stars. Instead, they're attacking a species that has been preparing for this war for over a century. A species that has turned every challenge into an